What's up, guys? I'm Alex.
I'm Jason. We're the Table Monkeys, and we are here with another video. Today we are going to be talking about the
Devin versus
Sandris dark card,
yeah.
the debacle, the drama, the match itself. We're not going to get into the drama or anything yet. We're going to talk about the match because it was an interesting match. And then we can talk about all this stuff about live, not live, and all that stuff in a bit. Because we do have some opinions on it, but we're not here to cry about it.
So, I mean, I think the match went as everyone expected.
Yeah.
Devin dominated. I think he could have made it look a lot easier than it did, but in typical Devin fashion, he wanted to make it more entertaining for the viewers and have fun with it himself. So he played around a lot. But later in the rounds, later in the match, he showed how quickly he could end the match.
Yeah, as soon as Sandris gave up, right? He's like Devin's getting his hook. He finally gets it set in really nice. He looks up at the camera, and then as soon as Sedis lets go and quits, you can just see like the disappointment in Devin's eyes. She's like, oh. God, it was one of those moments like, what, already?
Yeah. Well, I mean, smart move by Sandris.
Well, at that point, yeah.
I'm sure he knew going into it he was going to lose.
It was smart, but it was also what enticed Devin to be like, that's it, I'm coming right for you now. Like he's what he says to Yan, he's like, he already quit. I got no time for this now. I'm just going to finish him quick. Like, he already quit. He's already showed me he's a quitter.
Yeah.
Which, like Alex said, the way Devin puts on a show and performs at a match is just epic. It's not, I believe it's all part of a tactic to win, but it just results in such an amazing show to watch, which was awesome. We obviously all enjoyed watching that. I agree with Alex. Obviously, it went how we all kind of thought it was going to go. I mean, there was a little bit of like, what is Sandris actually capable of with how he dealt with Matt, which was pretty impressive. And I don't think that this match takes away from what he did to Matt.
No, of course not.
We
Devin and Matt are on completely different levels.
That's more, again, it's kind of what we were saying about East vs. West matches before. We were like, I don't think it was any of Sandris's faults. I think it was how prepared Devin is. Like, people don't realize where Devin's actually at right now. And yes, for 115 kilo, like, I don't think there's anybody that can even come close to him. I have no idea what his plan is for Gennady. If he's going to try to, I don't assume he's going to try to get back up to 300 or anything.
I feel like in the video he said he would kind of stay around the same weight.
That's what I figure he's going to do. Is maybe 10 pounds he's going to add on, but he's totally changed his body. Like, so much of his weight is in his arm now. He really is
right arm.
His right arm. It really is like he's like, for his stature and his frame, like being a lanky kind of taller, skinnier guy, his arm now is equivalent to, like, if the rest of his body was proportionate to his arm, he'd be 330, 340 pounds easy. Easy. Like, his arm is so much bigger than the rest of his body now, and it's playing out on the table. Like,
100%.
The way he dominated Sandris was so impressive. And just the technique, like the technical aspect of it. There's no more tricks or games. Obviously, there's a few like he's playing, but it's so much just straight up fundamental arm wrestling, gaining control of the hill, just trapping his opponent down the hill as he explains. It's just beautiful to watch. So that's how we feel about the match. Match was awesome.
Yeah.
And
so let's talk about how it was displayed to the public.
Yeah, or how it was, and then how it was sort of perceived and stuff. So here's our opinion on the whole live thing.
Your opinion.
Well, yeah, sorry, that's true. This is my opinion. That's right. This isn't a joint thing yet. We obviously might have some difference of opinion here, but for me, I really feel like I really appreciate what Neil is doing, and I do think that there is a market for it. We can get into the critiques and be like positive critiques about Armwars specifically and how it's produced, but I do feel that in the bigger picture, when you want to talk about getting to the actual pinnacle of the sport, it can't be pre-recorded. Like, even if it's the same day pre-recorded, there's no sport in the world that's played at the top level that has spectator involvement that's pre-recorded. Like, you wouldn't you wouldn't watch the UFC if it happened last weekend. You couldn't have Tyson versus Evander Holyfield and have it had happened a week or two before and then show it as a replay and have it have the same effect. And there's two reasons for that. First of all, it's the crowd's involvement, like being a part of a group of millions of pay-per-view watchers that are all watching an event at the same time. It creates an energy that you can't duplicate having it be pre-recorded. And that energy is also something that the athletes feel. Like when you're performing, and not only are you performing in front of a large audience of people, that adds an element of adrenaline to the match. But now knowing that there's millions of eyes also watching this live at the same time, that adds a whole nother level of what people are willing to put on the line and how far people are willing to push and the kind of environment and energy that you're going to get. So in the bigger scheme of things, like grand picture, I just don't think that pre-recorded matches are actually going to be successful as far as reaching the pinnacle of the sport. I totally understand Neil's point of trying to make it appeal to the non-arm wrestler, and I can get into the critiques of that later, as though I fully support that and agree with that. I don't necessarily believe that the Armwars sort of brand or the way they're trying to do it right now is exactly the best way to do it. But I do agree with the premise or the idea.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion on it. There's pre-recorded matches for top level sports. I just don't think that it makes any sense or that it will work because you need the energy of a live sport.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that point. Like when he was doing it, the old Armwars videos back in where you see the ones in Manchester Center where Devin and Michael, those were shown to a live audience of non-arm wrestlers and then pre-recorded and shown later. But it was such a different time in arm wrestling. I feel like it was not the same.
It's not just a different time in arm wrestling in the world. Now things are all about it just happened. I caught it. That live thing has so much more meaning nowadays than it might have had 20 years ago.
Right, and now with the introduction of Stake Kings and betting into arm wrestling, you cannot do that with pre-recorded matches, right? Because it just people would know the result beforehand, and that would
it's too much conflicting interest. There's no way for it to actually work.
So that just limits the amount of money that can be made from one match, limit the money that the athletes can make. So that's a complete no-go. And then there's the whole issue of the match being promoted after it's already happened.
Yeah, this is another part of this whole issue, which I think might be more specific to this actual dark card that I think might be what left people with some of a sour taste, and why it got the reaction it did is because there was a lot of promotion, and whether I never thought it was going to be live, it was going to be a live broadcast, because I know how Neil likes to do it, but I did assume it was going to happen that day. I'm not saying it didn't happen that day, but there's a lot of things that look like it didn't, and there's a lot of speculation of whether or not it did, and the fact that they're not going to come out and say whether or not it did leads to more speculation. And I think that all of that adds up to what Alex just said is the main point, is the fact that there was this promotion, there was this talk of you're going to see what happens. And it's hard not to go back and look at that and be like, wait, so that was all fake, all lies, or was it or not? And there's a level of honesty that people need and expect from YouTube nowadays, or just in general. I think even though this world is full of dishonesty, that once people feel like something was fake, then they kind of don't know if they can trust the whole thing, right? And I think that's partly what happened to Neil with this whole thing, was that once people realized I thought it was happening today, I didn't even know if it was happening today, or I thought it was once there was a little bit of feeling of being deceived, it led it to be well, then maybe the whole thing's bullshit. Yeah. And that, unfair or not, is a reaction that is kind of understandable from a group of people. Not saying that everybody felt that way, but you have such a large group of people interacting with this event, it's understandable that some of them did feel that way. Yeah. Now, going to the whole, crybaby phase, the way that somebody did that, I don't know if we want to mention it, but obviously that brought a lot of attention to it. That's also not the way to handle it. That's not collective for the sport. And there was also a lot of the way he went about presenting it that seemed kind of had its own level of deception or bullshit to it. So I think that was just a situation of two wrongs don't make a right, right?
Right.
And we're not trying to critique or be, like we said, crybaby about it. We're just trying to be
trying to get some positive
feedback, be critical, but for the better good. We want nothing more than to grow the sport the same way Neil does, and I think the best way for it to grow is to make it appeal to non-arm wrestlers.
Yeah, I think one thing that could have been done that maybe would have at least alleviated some of the problems was just have it shown as a premiere. So even though it was,
you missed. So
I know Miguel.
Alex missed. He hasn't seen Neil's whole hour-long thing, so that was a big issue. He had it set as a premiere, and then when they went to actually premiere it, it meant that it had to be public. It couldn't be for members only. So then he had so he was like, that was like, oh my God, my day is ruined. Like for Neil, like he was like, holy fuck, what the fuck just happened? Like right before, and this is like minutes before it's supposed to go, and everybody's expecting to see it. So that was a whole debacle, and he agreed 100%. If it had been premiered and people couldn't have fast forwarded, and there was a live chat, would have completely that might have fixed the problem on its own. 100%, no disagreement there. It doesn't take away from all the points he made about pre-recorded matches. Unfortunately.
Like going forward, obviously, if you want to push the sport to its furthest level, we're going to have the matches be live, shown to the audience for pay-per-view, and they can't be pre-recorded. There's a reason why East vs. West promotions are now more popular than Armwars. King of the Table, even though King of the Table is a bit more infrequent, it still draws a lot of hype because of the pay-per-view live aspect. It's a lot more entertaining for the viewers, and the hype we know is real.
Well, there is some argument there, though. I do agree East vs. West being too long. I do agree for the non-arm wrestlers, there's so much time in between and so much of the competition that is uninteresting for the non-arm wrestler. We have to find a way to like sort of bridge the gap or meet in the middle between the Armwars production and the East vs. West live aspect. King of the Table, like you said, that's kind of somewhere in the middle, sort of. But it's still such an early league for themselves. There's still a lot of things they could fill in the gaps with. So since this has been a bit of a critical video anyway, and to try to give some positive feedback, because really what we want to do is just help improve the product. And like we say, nothing means more to us than like pushing the sport forward. So I guess the feedback that I would give to Neil and Armwars as a production is that I think it's reaching a level of being a little bit overproduced. It's kind of like a guitar player that like gives you all his best licks right off the bat, or like doesn't, look what I can do while he's playing. It's like there becomes a point where it doesn't have the same effect anymore because you've used it so much. And I feel like that's kind of what happens with Armwars, at least by the time I'm finished watching like a full production, is like there's so much drama and so much back end description and talking and hype and everything, which I like and I think is important. But I feel like if it was more about character development and about educating the audience about arm wrestling, I feel like that's one of the big gaps that we're missing, is that with Armwars, a lot of the information that's being, like the arm wrestling information that's being talked about is arm wrestlers understand it, but non-arm wrestlers don't. And then all the dramatized stuff non-arm wrestlers enjoy and can get involved in because it's not about arm wrestling. And then the arm wrestlers get like, oh, this is more production than I want, or a little bit boring. Where if you think about, like, I like to compare it to UFC. I think that's the best sport for us to compare ourselves to. And one of the biggest things for UFC was when Joe Rogan got involved and was able to explain to people the jiu-jitsu side of things and the ground game, because before that, it's like people didn't understand. They wanted to see people punch each other in the face. They didn't care when somebody tackled another guy, took him to the ground and laid on him for 5 minutes. That didn't make any sense. But after a couple of years of Joe Rogan explaining, what side mount was and what advancing to full mount and all that kind of shit meant, people could start to see it and understand it. And now it's a huge part of the game, and people know how jiu-jitsu works because it's been explained to them on a simpler level. And I think that's what needs to happen with arm wrestling more, is explaining the tactics in the matches and in the games and in the techniques.
Stuff that we already know but take for granted. But
exactly.
The lame person doesn't understand. Maybe this is the first time they've seen arm wrestling, and they don't know what a slip means. They don't know what happens when somebody flops their wrist. They don't understand why
the difference between shoulder commitment, like inside and outside, like just explaining those little intricacies of the game in a way so that people can really understand when someone's rushing forward and the other person's diving back, like what they're actually fighting for there. and that will really involve them in the arm wrestling, and then like we said, I think the character development, which again, to look back into UFC, you think of like the show Ultimate Fighter Championship, like that changed the sport because as all these athletes got into the league, they had a show that showed us who they were as people. Where Armwars is like, how much does this match mean to this person? And it's about that match and that that interaction, right? Or that encounter between these two opponents. But it's not about who these two people are as people as much, you know? Like where if you look at like old WAL matches, they might get into like, oh, Sam Harris is a roofer. This guy, you know, Todd Hutchins is an engineer and he doesn't actually, but he trains like this. And like they would teach you a little bit about the characters and who they are as people. So now you're more connected to them on the table.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's maybe that's the part that Armwars is missing a little bit. Not that that's not what they're trying to do, but they're missing the mark a little bit by being too much about the production and not enough about, I would say, character development and education. That would be where I would try to like change it up a little bit.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. And yeah, I guess that's about all we have to say about this topic. I mean, in conclusion, I think we still obviously love Neil. We don't think he cheated us or scammed us out of anything. He still makes amazing matches and he's a great producer of arm wrestling content. It's clear that he loves the sport and is very passionate about it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be somewhat successful. Like people are going to watch it. We're going to watch the matches after they're like if they're pre-recorded or not. That's not going to. We're not saying that that's like, oh, nobody's going to watch it because of that. But taking it to the next level and really pushing it forward so that the non-arm wrestler is like, fuck, I got to see what happens this weekend between Devin and Gennady. Like, in order for us to get to that level, first of all, that match has to be live. And second of all, we need to educate people and have more character development. But yeah, like Alex said, we still support it and we're still going to totally watch it. And this is only meant to be like positive feedback.
Yeah.
But
let us know what you think down in the comments. I'm sure you've seen a lot of different opinions of this topic already.
Yeah. Did you feel cheated? Did you agree with Ryan? Did you care that it was live, not live, all those things? Let us know. Feedback, comments,
all those things.
Subscribe, bell, smash.
Monkeys out.
Peace.